What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? How are we doing? Just got back from New Orleans. Some say the city that never sleeps is New York. I think you could add in the Big Easy to that as well. So I'm home, safe and sound. Brought a couple beignets for my beautiful fiance and the dog and myself. I just slammed about one and a half right before I jumped in. There's a little Cafe Du Monde, and as I was walking, making my way to the plane, I'm like, yeah, I gotta grab a couple of these hot off the stove. And stove, maybe fryer. I think they're fried bread. Pretty good though. I mean, powdered sugar all over it. Highly recommend. I don't really have much to say left on this game. Stuckey and I recorded a gambling kind of preview video earlier in the week. That will be out later today. So we go pretty in depth on this game. Colin and I earlier this week talked a lot about it as well. I've discussed the Chiefs and the Eagles pretty extensively over the course of the last 10 plus days. So everything I have to say has kind of been said. I like Kansas City in this game. I've picked against them for a long, long time, and I think I owe it to the Chiefs. As someone was mentioning to me last night at the volume party, that Andy Reid gave me a shout out. I must have missed it. I don't know if it was this week or last week when he was on the herd. So it's like, I mean, the guy's giving me shout outs on national television. I can't even pick his team. Some of my best friend in the league, works on the squad. And, I gotta support. So I like the Chiefs. I like the Chiefs to three-peat and to go on one of the most legendary runs ever. But I thought today I'd give a little recap of my experience in New Orleans. It got the last 24 hours were kind of wild. Hit on a couple other things that I saw floating around out there, and yeah. So before we dive in to New Orleans' Super Bowl week, I do have to give a shout out to my friends, my partners in the official ticketing app of this podcast. Do you want to go to a game? Do you want to, as you leave, the Superdome, and right next to it is the Smoothie King Arena, where Zion's having some smoothies. But if you want to go to a game, if you want to go to an event, if you want to go, you name it. What do you want to do? Go to spring training? I'm going to Waste Management. If you're listening to this on Friday, I'm there. So if you any event type like that you want to go to, any concert, Taylor Swift. I don't think she has a Eras tour. I guess that was last year. I saw her and Blake Lively. That looks like that friendship is over. But any concert you want to go to this spring, this summer, they got you covered. Comedy shows, you name it. You can search by the venue, you can search by the team, you can search by the artist, then by the arena or the stadium. You can search by the price point, by where you want to sit. It shows you where the concert or the stage is. It just doesn't get any easier to use. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I feel very fortunate that Colin is not a big believer in Radio Row. And because if he was, I mean, what would I do? Not go? I would go and I would participate. I've always hated Radio Row. I participated in it when I was in the radio world, and I just thought it was so cookie cutter. And if you don't have relationships and you're not super famous like a Coward or a Stephen A., your interviews with a lot of these guys are just not very good. Now, it doesn't mean that some can't turn out to be, but that environment is just not for me. And I'm glad that he looks down upon it. He just shows up for the party, broadcasts a couple days live, and then he's out of there. But the only reason I went, and I probably would not have gone if we don't do this yearly party. And I go really for two reasons: to see people like Colin and other people that run the volume, and then see which these people are part of it as well, our sales teams and the sponsors. And one consistent theme I've gotten the last couple of years, and I know this going in, but when you're with people in person, you're hearing this stuff. We crush it when it comes to the advertisers love being a part of the show. And that's because and when I say we, you guys have been very successful for them because when we promote stuff and we try to make it stuff that I like I'm wearing Travis Matthews right now. You guys, that campaign, they were blown away. They were like, Middlekauff is pushing some serious product. Gametime. We're the only show on the volume that they've come back to, and they're the official ticketing app of this podcast. And it's a testament to you guys, the loyalty of the show. We've kind of been, I'm not on television every day, right? I'm not super famous when it comes to like some of these people that talk for a living, and that's fine. Like you couldn't pay me to be on television. Well, you probably could, but I wouldn't leave Scottsdale. If you got a studio here, I might be able to make it. But my point is that like this has been kind of like an underground, just swinging away at our pick and grinding now for 6, 7 years building this thing up, and it's really become very successful. And I owe it all to you guys for listening to the show, telling people about this show, and being very loyal to what we've got going here. And I mean, if you listen, I take this very seriously. Like I do these every day for a reason. I've told a lot of people I approach this like a daily radio show, but this is also my business. Like this is my life. Like all my chips are in the middle of the table on this venture. Like I own this stuff. Like this is mine. This is all I have. Like I don't have other, you know, side businesses. Like this is my profession. And I really, really appreciate, and so does everyone that's a part of this thing, is just very impressed by what we got going on, and it's all because of you. So I mean, I truly, this sounds cheesy or whatever, but thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening whenever you can, telling people about it. It's freaking awesome. And like I said, I mean, the reason I go is like to talk to people part of the volume. I got some ideas brewing, but and also to talk to the sponsors and stuff. So last night at the party, I just a little rundown. It's a lot of people like I would say media people, and then there's some like all of a sudden you'll look and there will be Terrell Owens. Like God, Terrell Owens looks fantastic. How does Terrell Owens look so good? He looks exactly like he did when he played for like the Eagles in 2005. I was talking to someone on the Eagles staff. I was like, and I noticed this a couple weeks ago, and he brought it up. He's like, Howie looks the same. I'm like, Howie looks the exact same of when I met him in 2010, and he was 35 years old. Now he's like 49, 50, and he literally looks the same. I feel like I look dramatically different than I did 5 years ago. Maybe I put on a little weight, fluctuate. Diet can be up and down. But my point, it's great. I'm looking at Terrell Owens, Shannon Sharp. Shannon Sharp looks like he could play middle linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers. Like he looks like Ray Lewis, except he's got him by a couple inches. Shannon Sharp is Matt. He looks just fantastic. And I saw Matt Patricia. I'm leaving to kind of go. My mindset going into this party. Listen, this is a business trip. I'll have a cocktail. I'm going to drink a lot of water, maybe sip on a beer, but I'm not drinking. All of a sudden, that was the plan. I was doing a pretty good job, but then, it gets like 9, 30, 10. You're like, I got 5 or 6 vodkas, and it's just nice, starts flowing. I see Matt Patricia, and I'm like, God, I've been pretty hard on this guy. And I recently listened to some of his podcasts he did with Julian Edelman. And I was like, you know what? I kind of like this guy. Like he seems like a likable human. I've seen him on with Portnoy. It's like I don't why like I don't need to not like this guy. He didn't do anything to me. I'm not a Patriot guy. He had a bad year calling offense. Even last year the defense was not his fault with the Eagles. He got thrust into the situation. And I thought, should I go apologize to him? Now he there's I would say 95% chance he wouldn't know me from the man on the moon. So even if I went up to him, I'd be like, bro, yeah, I don't care. But of the slim chance that he does, obviously his reaction to me would probably be negative. But I ended up not doing it. But it did cross my mind. Now everyone was leaving, hopping into this bus, so I was like, yeah, I gotta go. But it did cross my mind. But it was a good time. You just talking a lot of when you put a party together full of television people, podcasters, and radio hosts of people to just talk for a living, everyone was just trying to talk over the other people. Like it's a lot of talkers in one area. I mean, it is a ton of people that just think everything that's coming out of their mouth means a lot. And listen, I'm guilty of this too. So I'm not pointing the finger here at anyone that I wouldn't point back at myself. but you're just looking around and everyone is just talking each other's heads off. So it was really, really enjoyable. Obviously, a lot of positive feedback. Jamie Horowitz, who is partners with Colin in the volume, and yeah, I think he's president or partners with Peyton in Omaha. I'm like, listen, I need Peyton and Eli. We got to make this happen sometime this spring or summer. I will come out to Denver. I want to play golf, film it with Peyton, have him on the pod. But I want to hang out with Peyton Manning in a professional setting. Man, we can have cocktails too or beers. But I pitched that hard. I pitched that really, really hard. I also met the Cavino and Rich, who any of you guys that follow Colin's podcast feed, they're on there. And Cavino's story of working at the radio station Howard Stern worked at in the mid to late 90s and being around him and then going to Sirius with him. I mean, it really is pretty crazy how powerful. I mean, the two biggest radio hosts in the history of America in terms of money were Rush Limbaugh and Howard Stern. There's really not even a close third. I mean, at one point in time, he was telling me Howard Stern was making like $150 million a year. And this is like the early 2000s. Obviously, $150 million a year now is still a shitload of money. It was a lot more money back then. Like, there's not like many things in the world that wouldn't essentially be free. So I mean, it's pretty crazy how much in his heyday he was making and how powerful his brand was. I mean, Sirius XM didn't even really operate. They signed him, and I mean, it became a business model. Just one human being, they built the business model under him. And then somehow with one of the head sales guys for iHeart and some other radio hosts from Nashville, who I didn't know, I just met him last night. Like, we're going to another party. I'm like, shit, I'm in. Let's go. Where are we going? And all of a sudden, we take this van to the casino. I didn't even realize there were casinos in downtown New Orleans. And we are going up escalators, back rooms. All of a sudden, the door opens. Someone gives you a wristband. They're like, "Who are you here with?" I'm like, "These guys." And you get the wristband on, you walk in, and it is Club Shay Shay. It is Shannon Sharp's party. It is everything you'd think it would be. It's kind of dark. I mean, it's got to be at the top of the casino. Dark, some windows looking out over New Orleans, just bar packed. A ton of dudes. And I mean a ton of dudes who I grew up watching. I mean, everywhere you look, there you'd bump into Tim Brown, you'd bump into, Michael Irvin. It was just, kind of Warren Moon, just like his crew, his era of just like all these motherfuckers that played in the 80s and the 90s. Like I'm not saying they are, and I'm not trying to be that guy, but like you just don't get any tougher than these guys. And the one thing you realize being at the Super Bowl, being around these NFL guys, they are massive. They are very, very big. I mean, they're all, even just the receiver. Like you run into Tim Brown or Michael Irvin. Like, good luck tackling that guy. When I flew out, Debo Samuel was on my flight, and we got deplaned from the flight. It was kind of, I mean, honestly, it was pretty tragic. Someone died. We got on the plane. Probably half the plane was on the plane. Then all of a sudden, they scream over the emergency, like the pilot does. Hey, is there a medical professional? Is there a medical professional? All of a sudden, a lady runs up, and we're just sitting there for like 20 minutes. And I see Debo go to the bathroom, and he comes back, and he was like a couple rows ahead of me, and some ladies ask him like what was going on. I mean, they don't know who he is. And he's like, yeah, he's just laying there. It doesn't look like he's moving. And then it was like another 15 minutes. I'm like, I had to go to the bathroom. When I went to the bathroom, they were giving him the shock treatment, and it was clearly not good. And they didn't tell me directly, but I was like, did he pass? Because they make us all get off the plane. We had to wait hours, and she basically alluded to it did not go well. So that's just it was hard to even be mad. It's like my day. I mean, I can't even imagine. I was trying to take a flight to New Orleans. All of a sudden, he lost his life. But I was sitting then on deplane. I'm sitting next to Debo, and I've seen him at practice. I mean, I've been to a ton of practices with Debo Samuel. But when you're sitting next to him, the size. I mean, the size and the thickness of all these guys. It's like this is a grown fucking man's league. It really is. At the party last night, Colin and a bunch of his crew from LA flew out on Thursday morning to New Orleans, and Bryce Young was on the flight. And Greg Toohey, who works on Colin's show, was like, "Bro, it was crazy how small he is." I'm like, "Yeah, he's probably the smallest player in the history of the league. Definitely a quarterback. I mean, he's like 5'9", a buck 80. Like that is not the size of these guys. I mean, they are. I can't tell you how many. And the thing with the NFL, you can run into a guy If you're not like working in the league or he's not on your team, you just don't know exactly who it is, but you know, like, yeah, it's got to be a D tackler or guard. Like they're just, I walk around society. Humans don't look like that. I don't know. I'm not going to ask the guy who he is, but he's an NFL player and they just are bigger than all the other humans. And then we go to Shay Shay and it is just, it's dark. It's just late 90s, early 2000s, like a lot of like jagged edge. It's everything I would imagine. And I'm like, you know what? I got to go introduce myself to Shannon. I work with Shannon, right? We're all part of this volume. I'm like a coworker of Shannon. And again, he's sitting next to Stephen A. And they're just, some ladies around him. Like life's good for those two guys. I'm like, I'm just gonna go talk to Shannon Sharp. And I tried. And now, granted, it was loud, probably not the ideal situation. I bet when I left that interaction, if you told me that he thought that I was like the guy that cleans the toilets at Fox Sports One, very possible. I also tried to do it with Ocho Cinco. Now, he was like passing by, also didn't go that well. I would say the coolest conversation I had there by a mile was Takeo Spikes. And you always got to do, when you see these guys, I'm never, I always try to have an in, right? Like I ran into LaDainian Tomlinson today. Well, I'm good buddies with Lorenzo O'Neal. So is he's really good friends with him. I mean, it's like one of LaDainian Tomlinson's best friends. So it's like, okay, that's my in. So I walk up to LT in the gym and I go, hey, Lo Neal's one of my good buddies. And he smiles and we start BSing for a minute. And so you got to have it in. So I look at Takeo and I was like, I loved you when you played that year for the 49ers. And he lit up. He was like, that was one of my favorite years of my career. And then we started BSing. I said, hey, man, I used to work with Coach Reed and Spags. Well, he played for the Eagles. And you're looking at Takeo Spikes and you go, I can't even imagine. And Takeo looks like he easily could give the Eagles or Chiefs 30 snaps, especially against the run. Fucking being a running back and meeting that guy in the hole, good luck. Like the one thing I would say the smallest awesome player that I ran into by a mile was LaDainian Tomlinson. Now he's been retired for a long time, and he just in general isn't that tall. So like if you didn't know exactly who he was, you wouldn't think like that's an NFL player. But also in the gym, I'm pretty sure it was Anquan Bolden who was giving a workout. He was there an hour going like he is training for the NFL draft. It was great. I was like, if that is Anquan Bolden, I'm pretty sure it is. He is getting after it. But Takeo Spikes, man, you talk about a badass. There was like an intensity to him. He was cool. So that was fun. And then I was like, okay, I gotta just go home. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. Nothing's really it's like I don't know anyone at this event. It's just it feels like it's kind of clearing out too. So kind of make my way down. I'm like, I'm starving because I didn't eat any dinner. I had like kind of a late lunch. I didn't feel it was so hot and humid. I just ordered room service. I got a chicken sandwich. The bread was awful, so I basically just ate the chicken. And you kind of eat some like handheld snacks at the volume party. And all of a sudden, I see this like little pizza hole in the wall. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, I'm gonna go get a slice of pizza. End up getting two. But who's in there? Lendale White. It's me and Lendale White. So I'm like, well, I gotta say something to him. So we just start talking about the Trojans. And one thing is, when you're ever around someone from USC, the best way to just end your conversation when you're walking away is just go, fight on. And that's been my go-to move with a lot of these Trojan players for a long time. And he looks at me and he goes, fight on. I walked out with my piece of pizza, slammed him and went to bed. This morning I ran into Sam Darnold multiple times. And we actually ended up talking golf for a minute, about where he plays in Southern California. And then we're talking, he's wearing a Masters shirt. So we're talking about golf and how he plays with Josh Allen. Then all of a sudden I look up and coming in the door is Jared Goff. I'm like, this is, and I'm staying at the JW Marriott, not because, well, I mean, I get free points. I don't travel that much, so when I do, I am more inclined to go to the nicer hotel. And honestly, I mean, the hotel was technically free for me because I used my points, and they screwed me on a room, so I got the first night free. But the JW was, I mean, just loaded with players. And that's where the quarterbacks were staying. The thing about Sam Darnold, and this is why I always say about quarterbacks, and then when Jared Goff walked in, and I'm like 5'10", they are huge. I mean, they're not like super thick. I would guess both Sam may weigh 220, maybe Goff 215, somewhere in that range. But they are both pushing 6'5". They are really, really tall. And this is why you think height doesn't mean anything. It's like, yeah, it kind of matters. It helps to be able to see. Jared Goff can't move. So it helps to be able to sit in the pocket and release the ball from the middle of the pocket and be able to not have to move to see over your guard or tackle. But one thing that hit me, whether it was whoever, and again, most of these people I'm just starting a conversation with do not know me, right? We do not have a relationship. And I'm not trying to like, hey, I'm Colin Cat. I just try to talk like a normal human. And I would say, and I've always thought this, the NFL is full of really, really high level guys. There's a lot of humility to a lot of these guys, especially at when they're playing in the league. And I think a huge part of it is they get yelled at constantly. They get criticized all the time. Like I watched Debo when we got deploying sit there, and there was this dude who was just decked out in Kansas City gear, and he was flying to the game, or not to the. I don't think he was actually going to the game, but he's flying to New Orleans, and he was just shooting the shit with Debo, like peppering him with football questions. I think he was on Debo was on his fantasy team, and Debo couldn't have been any nicer. It's like you just see these guys, and I remember back in the day when the league was kind of going through it, when some of their guys were getting in trouble. Even then, it was such a small percentage of players who were kind of like slapdicks. The large percentage of this league is pretty easygoing, nice guys. They're just obviously really good, absolute monsters on the football field. But I've always been impressed by that when I worked in the league, when I did radio when I was around them a lot, and you go to events like this and you just see them interact. It's like pretty high level group. The NFL is in a really, really good shape with the crew of guys they have. Um, and that was kind of it. Then I got into a plane and I got the hell out of there. So it's 36, 38 hours felt about right. And yeah, I think that it's that place is crazy, man. If you've never been, you got to probably enjoy. We'll dive into them in a minute. This ain't the little itty bitty tiny bowl. This is the Super Bowl 59. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 59. Scoring touchdowns is key to hosting the Vince Lombardi Trophy, and you have a shot to score big by betting on them at DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score a TD. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. New DraftKings customers can bet $5 to get 200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get 200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. The crown is yours. But one thing I want to hit on is I watched Myles Garrett with Rich Eisen. So after his trade request and then him talking about it, I thought he did it in a really, really level-headed way. And like I think it's at this time, like if you're Cleveland, I think you just trade him. I think the time is now. I think he's handling it in a very mature way. I think he was smart to handle it that way. Basically, put out like, "Come get me, guys. Make sure you start calling them because if I do not put this out there, they're not going to put it out." And Cleveland only has themselves to blame. Like they were out of the Deshaun Watson business. This all gets back to them or him. And I think anytime what Myles Garrett is saying without saying, this franchise is fucked and I want no part of it. I don't want to be part of this team with this elephant in the room with this contract. It's an anchor on our franchise, and there is no way out, no matter what we do. Even if we draft a quarterback at number two, the likelihood that it's going to be C.J. Stroud is probably not that high. It's more likely than it looks like a lot of these quarterbacks. It's a struggle for them as a rookie. So, like sometimes you see Max Crosby's tunes change a little bit. He goes back and forth because I think at Max Crosby's core, he wants to win and he wants to be in Oak or Vegas. I think at Myles Garrett's core, he just knows like this is not a place, and I don't know if Max is going to be able to realize that, especially this year. Like more than likely, the Raiders aren't going to be good this year, and he's going to continue wasting years in his prime. Like I wouldn't fault Max either if he did the same thing, which I don't expect him to do now that Pete Carroll's there. But Like I never have a problem with a guy requesting a trade if they've been there for a long time and they've produced. I have a problem when guys request a trade. It's like they're in their like second year. It's like, oh, there's now competition in the wide receiver room. It's like, suck it up, bro. You're not Jerry Rice. Like, calm down. But this guy has given you 8, 9 years. He's been an Pro Bowler for 6, 7 straight. He just was the defensive player of the year. Like, there's nothing else. He plays his balls off. Like, what else do you want out of the guy? He's given you all he has. And I think anytime that you kind of put all your chips in the middle of the table and you give it all, whether it's to a personal relationship, whether it's to a professional relationship, and you get to a point where, yeah, this isn't going to work. And I think most of us, I can just speak for myself because maybe we're all different. Some people that are very analytical and numbers driven try to quantify it more. I'm always, and I've always been, and still to this day moving forward, like I'm a gut feel. I'm a feel guy. I know, like, I just have to trust when something on or off. And I think most humans, I do think that crosses you. Now, some people need to validate it by something tangible on paper or tangible on an Excel spreadsheet. But it's pretty clear, like Myles Garrett understands where this franchise is at, and it's not going to change. Let's talk about a city that's really hot and a team that's really hot. This is presented by our friends at Louisiana Hot Sauce. Bring your food to your big game party and take it to a whole nother level with the original Louisiana hot sauce. With bold, authentic flavor that embodies the rich culinary tradition of Louisiana, the original Louisiana brand hot sauce is perfect for those who demand flavor with just the right amount of heat. I would say this: there is no hotter city. Literally, it was 75 degrees and humid. How do people, and I like the South, getting married in Nashville here in about a month. But when I see 75 degrees and it's February 3rd, I don't expect humidity. So when you get out of the plane, it's like legitimately humid. I mean, today walking around, like I was sweating. I was like, God, this is brutal. But that city is made for the Super Bowl. There are certain places that are made to host the Super Bowl. Like in theory, like, oh, Los Angeles, not a great Super Bowl city. It's really spread out. Doesn't really work. You go, well, Scottsdale. Scottsdale's pretty cool, but where everything is in Old Town is 45 minutes away from where the stadium is. So it's not like this. I've talked to my buddies with the Eagles. They're going to walk from their hotel to the Superdome on Super Bowl Sunday to go to the game. Everything's in walking distance. It is tailor made to host these events. And I think it's perfect that when the Kansas City Chiefs are trying to become the most historic team in the history of the league, no team has ever won 3 straight Super Bowls. Are they the best team of all time? We can debate that till the cows come home. Do they have the best roster of all time? Obviously not. But I do believe this. If they win this Super Bowl in New Orleans, no one's ever doing that again. No one's ever winning 3 Super Bowls. I don't even think I'd be shocked, non-Chiefs, if a team ever went to 3 straight Super Bowls again. It's just very, very difficult in this salary cap league because typically during that time you would have to pay some players and then you have to get rid of, and your roster dramatically changes. Somehow the Chiefs were able to change their roster and trade Tyreek Hill, who's like one of the great wide receivers in the history of the league, and still be awesome. But I think it's awesome that they're doing it in New Orleans. That place, if you told me the Super Bowl, it was like the Masters. The Super Bowl was in New Orleans every single year, I don't think many people would complain. Or if you just told me it was a two city rotation, New Orleans and Miami, back and forth. Because I was asking someone this, it's like, wasn't the stadium kind of old? And yeah, it's not great, but who cares? It's not even about the stadium. That's not Super Bowl week. Super Bowl week is about everything else, the festivities, the food. And the one thing with New Orleans is like, it's got something for everybody. If you want to rage, go to Bourbon Street, and that place is jumping. If you just want to go to some sweet dinner, you're on the other side of Canal Street. There are just restaurants everywhere. They're like, this place is sweet. This place is sweet. I asked a couple people to recommend, like, where should I go? They're like, well, this one, this one, this one, this one. They're all 5 minutes away. There's a casino, multiple casinos downtown. Like, this is heaven. This is awesome. So props to New Orleans. You talk about a city that is literally and figuratively hot right now. It is just a perfect, perfect Super Bowl city. So stay hot, New Orleans. That's brought to you by my friends at Louisiana Hot Sauce because Louisiana Hot Sauce is hot and is the perfect pick to match your game day eats.